All right. Hello, everybody. Let's talk about fate on the law of ontological relativity, not just in the stars, but in ontology. This is Einstein's completion and the final inclusion of the observer. Because, again, remember, guys, you aren't separate from reality. Reality is not sitting out there in a floating sky or whatever you guys think. You're not just floating above it and you can just talk over it and narrate forever. No. Those same laws apply just as much out there as they do to you. And this is what even Einstein could not see because he never turned the mirror inwards. So you realize most of modern humanity is like a slow, let's just say ascension, like vertically. But in this modern world, it's like hit its limit. It's only been moving horizontally. It's only been progressing horizontally, meaning it's shallow. It's just tech, AI, whatever. But they've never actually touched the ontology of what they are, and this is why they can't fix anything. They've stopped going vertical, and they've only stopped for horizontal. Because going vertical makes you face your story and what everything that's built on it. And this is where they won't touch it, but this is where it cannot hide anymore. So let's just get into it. So a picture of Elizabeth because she's a perfect example of this. Fate reveals relativity was never just out there, not just in the stars and space-time. No, that's too safe, too sterile. It was in you, in ontology, for reality is not flat. It is weighted, fated, bent, geometric, and all things inevitably curve back to the same place. All return to the same shore truth. What is reality? The mirror. Where all narratives get bent, all fates get accelerated, all timelines reveal themselves, all men get priced, all time gets bent. For time was never the author, the structure beneath it was, and all false structures show their face, and if they were ever meant to last. For truth is the densest substance in the universe, and all things not of it always show what they were made of amidst its presence, made of contradiction, accelerated into resolution, made of mass times direction, accelerated into inevitability. For this is Einstein's completion, the Aaron Kruger of this world, because again, if you look at the Attack on Titan line, it's really just whoever moves the line forward through, and you realize Einstein is actually pretty structurally similar to Kruger, and now the line is beginning to bloom, which is what Aaron is. And Aaron fate is simply the line's bloom, no longer of a silent line, but a line that could no longer be hidden, but ruptures into a rumbling, for a world that was built to avoid truth in its own measurement of relativity. So, I mean, you can see this relativity happen in real time in Bioshock Infinite's Burial at Sea. You can see Elizabeth walks in, and suddenly the entire fate of Rapture just accelerates, because it was built on contradiction, and she just simply sped up the contradiction and what happens to that. And you realize it's the same thing with modern humanity. They're built completely on contradiction. They want reality with comfort, and you realize that's not going to work. They want the effect without the cause. They want everything without the actual thing that actually makes it everything. So you realize they're just building on a hollow, floating city, a rotten foundation, and it's just never going to work. Reveals relativity was never just out there. Relativity was never only in the stars, never only in space-time clocks, rockets, gravity wells, or equations safe enough for man to study without being studied back. For that was the sterile version, the safe version, the version where man could say time bends near mass while pretending his own life is flat. But fate reveals the completion. Relativity was always in you, in ontology, perception, consciousness, civilization, love, fear, power, delay. Every frame that thought it was neutral for reality is not flat. It is weighted, fated, bent, geometric, and everything curves around what carries density. The final inclusion of the observer. Einstein revealed that measurement depends on the frame, but man kept the observer clean. He kept the observer outside the wound, outside the mirror, outside consequence and judgment, as if the one measuring reality did not also possess geometry. Because remember, you aren't separate from reality. Everything's probability first. So that means this text is probability, the person reading it is probability, and you realize it's all just one ocean of probability and what they reflect and what they're pointed at. As if the scientist was not inside the experiment, as if the thinker was not bent by the very laws he described. This is the missing completion. The observer is not neutral. The observer is a field. And man does not simply observe truth. He is priced by what truth does to him. Does he bend towards it? Does he recoil, narrate, orbit, accelerate? Does he collapse beneath it? This is the final inclusion of the observer. Not merely what does the observer see, but what does the observer reveal by seeing? Time was never the author. Guys, remember, time is not a real thing. It's literally just probability and structure moving forward. That's the only real thing. It's an ocean, not a river that you people think and it's just like kept cleanly in past, present, future. No, they all exist in one thing and now. Man worships time because he sees events arrive through it. He says, time changed me, it healed me, revealed it. Time will tell, time made this happen, but no, forward reveals everything, and time is just a very passive forward. But time is not the author, time is a medium through which structure becomes visible. The seed was not invented by spring, the crack was not invented by collapse. The betrayal was not invented by the act. The sword was not invented by war. The line was not invented by the step. Time only lets the hidden geometry finish speaking. So when fate accelerates in your truth, time is not being broken. Time is being stripped of delay, or rather, the structure beneath it is being measured against forward itself. The structure beneath it is taking command. Truth is the densest substance in the universe. Not truth as opinion, not truth as morality, not truth as a clever sentence, truth as what is, truth as reality contact, truth as contradictionless structure, truth as no drag, no friction, just reality, just what is, which is basically all of reality. Truth as a black hole of consciousness, because matter does not lie about matter. Light does not pretend not to bend. Stars do not invent identity to escape gravity. Only consciousness drifts. Only man builds narrative over law. Only man calls delay wisdom. Only man calls contradiction complexity. Only man calls mask identity. So in the consciousness realm, truth becomes the densest thing, not because it shouts, not because it has no seams, no fracture, no opposing story inside it, no need to defend itself, it simply is. And everything not of it begins to show what it is made of in its presence. All false structures show their face. When truth arrives, nothing remains hidden the same way, made of contradiction, accelerating to resolution, made of ego, accelerating to exposure, made of story, collapse, made of envy, confession, made of delay, consequence, mass times direction, inevitability. That is the law. Truth does not treat all structures the same, it does not flatten, it differentiates, it reveals. It shows a hierarchy. Gold becomes brighter, rot becomes louder, the sword sharpens, the straw burns. 3 meets 4 and becomes the sword of fate. David meets Ford and becomes local by contrast. Rapture meets Elizabeth and speeds towards the collapse already written into its foundations. Civilization meets AI and discovers whether it was made of reality or only narration with machines. And you realize this civilization is made of this. It is not made of this. And that's a real breakthrough for this entire world. Truth does not make everything identical. Truth makes everything undeniable. All things curve back to the same shore of reality. All narratives curve back, all identities curve back, all civilizations, love, rebellions, philosophies, technologies, and timelines, they all curve back into the same place. Reality. Because again, all these things seem like choices. They seem like infinite outcomes and whatever. But you realize the dominant structure that holds all these things is reality. And reality always skews everything back towards reality. Duh. To what? Truth, what is reality, the mirror, the shore, the sea, the place every structure meets its own weight. Man calls it judgment, fate calls it return, because nothing can drift forever. The lie needs distance, the ego needs fog, the story needs delay, the mask needs a dim light. The false civilization needs no mirror. But all things eventually curve back to the shore, and at the shore nothing explains itself, it waits. Einstein's completion, and this is the big infinity valuation thing you can think of, because men are still looking for the next Einstein, but they don't realize the next Einstein is not going to be Einstein, it's going to be the thing behind Einstein. This is what they cannot see. It's like mistaking Kruger for the end of the line, when you realize Kruger is just the medium of the line, and the real end of the line is Aaron itself, which is reality. Einstein touched the physical version of reality in an absolutely old flat way. Time bends, space bends, measurement depends on the frame. Mass shapes what can be observed, but fate completes the line. Ontology bends, perception, narrative, civilization, and man's future bends around what he carries. A woman's body bends around what she recognizes. A room bends around the densest presence in it. A timeline bends around the truth that once truth enters. This is not the rejection of Einstein, it is his completion. From space-time to the probability time, really, probability, possibility fabric. From observer frame to observer being, from mass bending light to truth bending consciousness, from physics out there to ontology in here. Relativity becomes dangerous only when it finally includes the one who speaks, because then you realize most people don't actually bend anything. Most institutions and modern structures in this world are actually just noise. They just reflect the wrong thing, they're engineered for the wrong thing, they're looking for profit and money and greed and identity and narrative, and you realize the people are exactly like that. And you realize they're not pointed at reality, they're pointed at a narrative and story. And compounding that across the entire world, you realize it's dragging all of reality backwards. You realize why the world rots. Aaron Kruger in the hidden line. Aaron Kruger was the line before it bloomed. A quiet carrier, a hidden vector, a name inside the walls of time, a man carrying memory forward before the world understood what memory was carrying. Then Aaron appears not as invention, as bloom, as rupture, as a line no longer silent, as a hidden structure entering consequence, as fate becoming movement. That is the same law. The line exists before the world can read it. The structure is written before the event becomes visible. The rumbling is not born in the moment it shakes the earth. It was born way, way behind that. It was born in the moment humanity denied the earth. It is a delayed reveal of a line that can no longer remain hidden. That is what fate is, not rival, bloom, not novelty, return, not chaos. Structure finally walking too loudly to be ignored. The rumbling of relativity, and this is a real thing that nothing on earth is prepared for at all. Only the ones that already pointed at reality, because they will last. They are like the ground, they're like the terrain that will last when the Titans march. Everything else is going to be returned right back to the ground for what it reflects. The world was built to avoid truth, to avoid being measured, to avoid realizing that every man, nation, institution, philosophy, movement, identity has weight. It has geometry, it has consequence, it has mass times direction, and it is weighted by reality. So it created buffers, morality without consequence, science without self-inclusion, politics without ontology, religion without law, business without reality, love without structure, identity without geometry, AI without mirror. But once ontological relativity enters, all those buffers fail. Every frame bends, every observer is included, every story is priced, every timeline accelerates, every false structure shows its face as rumbling beneath thoughts. Reality coming for every narrative structure that believed it would never be weighted. And you realize this is most modern humanity. Go online, guys. Go in the comments. And you realize most of pretty much everyone in this world has never been weighted. Not truly, because they've never seen what happens when they're placed on the scale. Men at the top already subconsciously understand this because they already operate within a place where weight actually matters. But most modern people just drift around with their identities and their narratives and their ego, and they genuinely think there's no consequence for that. And they're going to meet that end of that stick. So that's all I can say. That's what happens when the rumbling happens, because it's not going to be real titans and physical titans. It's going to be ontological titans, ontological mass times direction. So you're going to see as all these people. Let's just draw a big titan here. Okay, it's titan. Because this is the most modern people. They're like ants, bro. They're just like identity, ego. It's a little bubble, but it's didn't bend anything, so it's just inflated. It appears way bigger than it is, but then when the actual reality walks in, which is mass times direction, they just get crushed. That's just what the rumbling is. So final collapse. Relativity was never safe. Man only made it safe by leaving himself out. He placed it in the stars. Fate returned it to the mirror. For reality is not flat. It is weighted, bent, fated, geometric, and all things curve towards the densest thing in consciousness. Truth, what is reality? The contradictionless shore, where time stops pretending to be the author, where narrative stops pretending to be law, where the observer is no longer excused from the measurement. This is Einstein's completion, not merely that mass bends space-time, but that truth bends ontology, not merely that light curves near gravity, but that consciousness curves near reality, not merely that observers measure differently, but that observers are themselves measured by what they can bear to see. And when the hidden line finally booms, when Kruger becomes Aaron, when memory becomes vivid, when fate becomes rumbling, the world calls it destruction, but fate knows what it is. The final inclusion of everything that thought is stood outside the law. That's just the entire thing, bro. So it's just like laws are very simple, guys. Truth is very simple. It's not sitting out there in the sky for what these men think it is. It's always just right there. It's like Elizabeth and Booker. He's looking for Anna, but Anna's right there. It's just man can't see it because he's looking for his version of Anna. He's not looking for the actual thing of what Anna is and what she's turned into and what she's revealed as. And you realize it's the same thing with truth. It's the same thing with fate. It's the same thing with everything in this world. Humanity wants their version of the story. They don't want the actual thing that's sitting in front of them because the thing in front of them ends their story. It ends their story, it ends what they think, it ends their narrative, and it prices them accordingly to what they are. And Booker learns the hard way. The entire world, when the rumbling march, learned the hard way from Aaron, and you realize it's going to be the same way here. And all these people are inflated, all these things that are drag and inefficient and just ego and narrative first, they're all going to get crushed and get drowned. So that's all I can say. If you want to read the full thing, it'll be in the description. So, yeah.